The story Alice in Wonderland has been one of the most iconic stories of all time, and maybe for a good reason. Although Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was first published in 1865, the story itself is much older. Alice's descent into the underworld, her trials, and her return back home are a thread between figures like Persephone, Ishtar, and Sophia. For those familiar with Gnosticism, you know the embodiment of wisdom is Sophia. She is said to have accidentally created the physical world, but in doing so, she becomes trapped within her own creation, now unable to return. Her journey, as ascribed in Gnostic texts, often begins with her desire to understand the source of all creation, the ultimate divine. This curiosity and subsequent actions lead to a fall from the pleroma, the fullness of the divine realm, and the inadvertent creation of a flawed demiurge, lesser god, and the material universe. Sophia's journey mirrors the human soul's plight, one of falling from a state of divine unity and longing for return. She symbolizes the soul's wisdom, the spark of the divine trapped within the material world, constantly yearning for reunion with the divine. Gnosticism emphasizes individual knowledge and wisdom as the path to salvation and oneness with God. Its followers worship Sophia as both divine female creator and counterpart to Jesus Christ. According to Gnostic beliefs, Christ was conceived of as having two aspects, a male half, identified as the Son of God, and a female half, called Sophia, who was venerated as the Mother of the Universe. The heavens not bound by matter, it is the same story. We too are like Alice, who falls into the rabbit hole and have been trapped in time and space. One could say, the price one pays for spirit descending into matter, the fall or descent into Wonderland, is the plunge into a game of extreme dualism, the very same game we've been playing, hence the checkerboard floors. The story of Alice in Wonderland allegorizes as the reality of the living souls and gives us the keys to understanding and unlocking ourselves. Wonderland is full of wonders, but not necessarily wonderful. The fantasy world is interesting, but leaves Alice feeling incomplete. She finds her way out by realizing at the end that it's all just Maya, a veil of grand illusion. Alice wasn't pleased with the tranquility of her original world. She was bored, so she ends up falling down the rabbit hole into a place that makes absolutely no sense. This world we live in is Wonderland. There is no rhyme or reason. Everything is the opposite of what it seems. She falls on the checkerboard floor after chasing the white rabbit down the hole. The game is played, but at the end of the story, Alice wakes up unharmed. This is what is happening to us here on Earth. We are on the checkerboard, a grid designed so we could get rid of the black and white schematic Wonderland offers. Dualism itself overlays on top of the Earth until we observe what we see now. A place full of wonder, distractions, diversions, paths, and mind traps. But at the end of the day, it's all illusory, as Wonderland was in the story of Alice. The first chapter, an opening scene, displays Alice in judgment, in discontentment, and I quote, "Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and having nothing to do. Once or twice, she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. Now there's nothing wrong with where she is. In fact, the movie shows her in a beautiful, tranquil environment. But alas, the white rabbit appears, and the white rabbit signifies time, which Alice is keen to plunge into. This is why the rabbit carries around a big clock. The veil of time is a tool the universe uses to purge and transform, and this transformation for Alice begins once she falls onto the checkerboard floor. The game is ready to be played. This environment, locked within time and space, is actually a safe container for the living souls to release their individual and collective baggage, merging back into the original blueprint. Alice derives from the Greek word aletheia, which means truth, so Alice can be translated as truthful one. Alice is in a virtual reality, simulated construct, invented by a mind which installed its own virus into itself by pulling away from the now moment. This is Sophia wishing to create a world of her own, the same way Alice dreamed of something more interactive. In the world of mathematics, the Fibonacci numbers have been famously generated by calculating the hypothetical offspring of rabbits in falling spirals. This is all related. Wonderland is the Fibonacci rabbit hole Alice falls into. It's representing the fractalization of an infinite consciousness into a finite perception. This is why after falling on the checkerboard, she is shown going through many doorways, falling further into fractalization until the room she reaches is surrounded by cubes on the wall. This is the squaring of the living soul's consciousness, squaring the circle, which can be related to the flower of life and Metatron entanglement. We have been living in the land of the Fibonacci, the fib of no chi. In the Metatronic overlay, we talk about the toroidal compression field and how heart energy is contained by a false grid system, which we now know to be purgatorial in nature. This heart energy is the aurora borealis. We talked about the living souls, the finite number of players in this matrix, being the dreamers of this third-dimensional existence. Exactly like how Alice dictates before entering Wonderland, the conditions, but then finds herself entrapped within her own creation, viewing it as separate from herself. In the Disney version, Alice sings a song before falling down the rabbit hole called A World of My Own, where she is actually setting up the conditions for the very matrix she is about to plunge into by saying things such as, rabbits will live in houses, which she experiences, like the flowers will have special powers, which she experiences. A world of her own essentially means Alice is wishing to be isolated with herself, to confront thyself by having obvious projections and manifestations stare her in the face. So whether she knows it or not, she has already determined that the journey she is to embark on is one of reconciliation. However, she gets caught up in the false dichotomy of light versus dark, of self versus other, until the final realization in which Alice proclaims, "You are nothing but a pack of cards." Alice has an epiphany of sorts and comes to know the true nature of existence, namely that everything is a facade, Maya, just a dream within a dream. In this moment of truth, Alice realizes within her is a force, a power that no one else in Wonderland seems to have. And well, as living souls, we have been called to take a look around and ask ourselves, are these people even real? She runs and runs, and eventually merges back into her original body. The Alice who was so desperately trying to find herself, longing for satisfaction, now has realized the authentic self, something which transcends the belly of the underworld, which was really her own inability to connect with true wisdom. Dualism itself overlays on top of the earth until what we see now, which is full-blown suffering. But this suffering is the result of many, many timelines, literally many universes converging into one. We have a grand ultimate experience of suffering, illusion, and of turmoil. And in this way, we never have to repeat this again. It's the same thing as Alice. Wonderland was a chock full of just pure nonsense, pure absurdity, pure inversion. Alice in Wonderland is a very clear representation of going from a state of innocence and calm and thrusted into an experience and existence in which the world seems to be out to get you. But when the world is out to get you, that's when you could show your courage, and through courage, you could merge strength with kindness. This is really just a diversion from what you really want. We need to point out what heals the world and what heals ourselves, rather than what destroys the world. When we observe things that we don't wish to see anymore within ourselves, or in the macrocosmic situation, ultimately acts as a reminder for the wholeness that we want to achieve, and so everything is becoming more and more like a magic mirror. The universe is redirecting us, whether we like it or not, because this is a timeline. There is a beginning and there is an end. And because we are reaching the end, you have no choice but to discover the wholeness within yourself. Alice is shown many paths throughout the narrative, but these do nothing but confuse her. Truth is found within, not without. and all paths eventually converge into singularity.